think we're live. He says. Hello and welcome to post-match reaction to Scotland versus Ireland. Hi, I'm Paul, the guy behind DrivingMaul, and today I have a brand new guest with me. So please do welcome. Also, the things up on there. Mark, to get to the show. How are you doing, sir?
Well, very well after that game. Very exciting. Thank you for having me. Still trying to work out how Scotland can lose, but there we go. The secrets of rugby. Or
as they always say, it's well, they scored less points, and it's as simple as that,
absolutely.
Really. Good to see you all in your in your Coventry outfits, and obviously you do some writing about them. So let's just before we kick off, where can people get hold of you and get all your stuff?
Well, I mainly post on Twitter under Mark A. Forster, I think it is. Mark A. Forster is the Twitter handle. And I write an occasional blog focusing on Coventry, but also rugby issues. And there are quite a few in England at the moment, with Premiership ring fencing back on the table.
And I guess one of the issues that I saw come up a lot on Twitter was around the amount of advantage that Romain Poite was playing today. Lots of the people saying, they've gone 30 metres upfield. When do you call off advantage nowadays? And essentially it seems to be, and if you don't, until you score really, otherwise from a penalty.
It's very confusing because I grew up watching rugby in the 70s, 80s and playing in the 80s and 90s and 2000s and a couple of years ago, but that's a different story. The laws of the game are always moving. They're never still, but you wouldn't have seen this even a couple of years ago. The advantage seems to be getting longer and longer. It's almost like referees are scared to shout advantage over. It happens in pretty much every international game you see now.
Yep, no, it's getting that way, and I don't think he did it any differently to other referees. But I say that's going to be one of the talking points I think we're going to see over Twitter, unfortunately, during this one. And this game started off with Scotland doing a lot of what England did to Ireland last weekend, which was basically chopping the runners down in the backfield. The Ireland was going backwards with the ball and then being forced to kick it away, but they just couldn't maintain that for the full 80 really.
I think Ireland got wise to it. Certainly after half time, there must have been some words, Joe Schmidt coming on and saying, "We can't allow this to happen." But if you look at the two respective games last week, Ireland had a very, very bruising encounter. And that must still be with them today. So Scotland obviously watched the England game and tried to adapt some of those tactics. And Ireland were a bit slow off the blocks today.
They were, but for Scotland, they couldn't really take advantage of it. One of the things that did see from Ireland up early on, which surprised me, was they gave away a couple of penalties within the first sort of 10 minutes. They're a single penalty team, normally just a handful. And that led to Scotland getting a 3 points lead. And then we had that old the chip through that we've seen from quite a few games this weekend, leading to a try for this tournament. Leading to a try for the opening try to Ireland. That seems to be the best attacking ploy at the moment.
It seemed to be against the run of play as well. So, I know on Twitter last week there was why are teams chipping away and kicking away, which is absolutely right. If you've got possession and you're heading to the 22 or in the 22, the old rules were you keep hold. Whereas we've seen, as you say, tries coming from little grubbers through. So it's proving that the basics of rugby that have been there for years and years are still working, and teams are coming up too quick in defence. The offside line is being drawn by the team in defence, and the referees aren't policing it effectively, in my opinion, of course. But some of the guys are seeing that they're advancing and going, here we go, and the grubber's working again.
And it's not just the people that and again, this isn't against any particular team. Every team's doing it because they can get away with it. Is that lots of players are offside at ruck time, but also you've now got your scrum half quite often in the defensive line as well, rather than sweeping round, and especially with Ireland, you've got both your wingers up as well, which just leaves one guy in the backfield to cover an awful lot of space. And if you want more, there's going to be space somewhere on the pitch. Now, whether you want that to be in your defensive line or in the backfield, it's a matter of can the opposition find that space with the ball. Is basically a lot of the time. So that was that. So they scored. Then we saw Hogg go off with a shoulder injury soon after that, and a lot of us. I mean, well, I thought that was going to be a big loss to them, but Kinghorn. I've got his name wrong. Anyway, has been proven to be a very good player over the last couple of weeks.
I think what struck me about Scotland today is that they possibly don't have the belief that Ireland has. They've got some very good players, but we saw some very, very silly mistakes. And that little bit of panic where they are better than that, plainly. But they've made mistakes. Kinghorn looked really dangerous. Obviously, Hogg is a class player, and as you say, losing somebody like that. But we saw with both sides when Sexton went off, Carberry's come up, and he was pretty much the difference between the two sides in the second half. So you've got people like Kinghorn who are really pushing for a starting place.
Yeah, he really was. I think Carberry had that wonderful moment in the second half where it's broken ball. He steps forward, spots that two forwards aren't as close to each other as they should be, hits the gap, makes it through, and then throws a good pass to Earls to score. But we also saw him put 2 or 3 passes to floor. He also through an interception for Russell to go through and score Scotland's try in that first half. It was a very mixed game from him. He didn't look comfortable at all.
I think that was the game, though. It was very, very scrappy. Neither side really dominated the set piece in terms of providing a stable platform. And I need to look back at some of the refereeing decisions because I'm not quite sure about some of the calls that Roman made, to be honest. But yeah, Ireland were uncharacteristic at times. And I think coming off the back of last weekend, I'm sure Scotland's initial assault rocked them. It is difficult to sit back and be calm when you've got blue shirts flinging themselves around you.
No, very true. And we're talking about the reason we're talking about Carberry is because Sexton went off. He got a lot of attention during this game. He was taking the ball to the line and playing and giving those late passes, which led to a wonderful score by Stockdale. But it also meant he was getting hit repeatedly, and his body just didn't take it today.
He's not been match fit really compared to previous seasons because he's been injured. He got a lot of that last week, and again today. And obviously, as a tactic, it worked.
So as a tactic, it worked. We lost him after 23 minutes. So perhaps the two most well-known players both gone in the first quarter of that game. Scotland really dominated the territory, particularly in that first half, but came out of it 10-12 down because you say we had that score that was against run of play by the chip through that Seymour then threw over the top of Maitland's head, and then perhaps the only sort of structured attack that led to anything from either side was that Stockdale try, and those two tries gave them the lead. Second half, to me, start off with just both teams throwing the ball to grass. Both teams, you said that hecticness from both sides, and but Ireland managed to string phases together, but it was very predictable, just running into a blue wall for most of that second half, and then eventually turning it over or knocking it on.
Do you know, it reminded me of the days in the late 70s, early 80s, where Scotland and Ireland brought such a passion to the game and would throw themselves in, and it was very much a hark back for me. The tackling from both sides was absolutely immense. I don't know how those guys are going to feel today, but I'm glad that I wasn't there to even hear the hits. You could hear some of them on the TV. The Scots were up on the gain line and stopped Ireland. Ireland, for the last few seasons, have dominated that gain line, and the Scots were there whacking them back. So people of the likes of Tad Furlong didn't have the impact that he's had in the last few years. Bundy Aki, again, he's been a sensation for Ireland in the last couple of seasons, and today he was nullified. And that was because of the Scottish defence. But then you turn it round, Scotland were hit everywhere by the Irish too. So, as a game for the neutrals, it was fascinating. It
was, but you look at players. If you look at some of the stats, we've got Kinghorn didn't have to make a tackle. Seymour only made 3. Maitland made 1. The tackling was narrow. I mean, some of the stats: Dell 22. Gilchrist 24, Gray 25, Ritchie 23, Strauss 26. To have 5 players in the pack all have to make over 20 tackles each. It was the same guys over and over again, and wow, to get those bodies back up, as you say, took a lot of heart.
And I don't know, that's the Scottish side, but the Irish as well. O'Mahony, he was ever present, and when he wasn't making the tackle, he was very much on the shoulder. The tackling was and what impressed me as an old school rugby player is that how many tackles were around the legs, were around the knees, were stopping the player and stopping the momentum of the attack. We've been told in the last 15, 20 years that you go high to smother the ball to stop the attack, but some of the players, there was one particular hit on Conor Murray, and it was I think it was Finn Russell, and he stopped him dead. And Ireland didn't quite know what to do because they had to stop. They weren't pouring forward as they would have done. So, the tackling today has been pretty cool. I know there have been missed tackles, but it's been heartening to see some very, very ferocious tackles and legal tackles.
The tackling today was they're both of them in the mid to high 80s, so percent completion rate, so very good tackling by both sides. And as you say, that was a particular Scotland, whereas England maybe trying to bash, make those dominant tackles. Scotland were kind of like, okay, the way we keep them in the backfield is we chop them straight down and make it quick. We do have two sides here that don't particularly like offloading, and Scotland try and play that 2-second ruck. Ireland, initially under Joe Smith, he banned offloading entirely. Now they have added that to their game. Recently, we didn't really see much of it today. From even though actually it says Scotland did more offloads than Ireland, but these aren't offloading teams, so you can afford to go low, chop it, and it's not going to deliver that hyper quick ball.
And what impresses me, and I talk about England, obviously England are my side, but when we've been going forward and making momentum, we haven't had the scrum half to get in there and whack it out as in the old days. It's almost like England have waited for perfect ball for another attack, which has slowed down the English attack without the opposition doing anything. Scotland and Ireland both possess scrum halves who have great vision and will just hit a pass straight away, and that's one of the good things about the way they play for me, and the fact that the ball is live, people are always in motion. And we saw a lot of that today, which was, you look at Conor Murray, he is a joy to watch when he's not yapping all the time to the referee and telling the referee what the rules are.
But that's most scrum halves nowadays, unfortunately.
And Laidlaw, similar. They're snapping at the heels of whoever's gone down.
And Laidlaw has he's got this reputation of being called Glacial Greg. I think that's been harsh. I think he's a lot faster than that, and has worked on that side of his game over the last couple of seasons. So yeah, I think that's not there anymore. Players we've already talked about is Kinghorn. He hit 99 metres running with ball in hand. Finn Russell 54, but a lot of that was in that interception he did. Otherwise, Scotland really seemed to get through that many metres with ball in hand, or be able to really break that Irish line much. I think a lot of that was in that second half. Actually, that was the side I was going to bring up. Was in that second half we saw lots of knock-ons by Scotland. I mean, they couldn't get phases together, and that shows in the number of scrums. Scotland had 4 scrums in this game. Ireland had 10 scrums in this game, and Scotland, as you were saying earlier, how did they lose this game? By just not retaining possession in the second half.
We saw that panic that led to their first try, where the two wingers they weren't really in concert. And you're in your 22, you've grabbed the ball, you just take it to ground, and you've got a man coming to support you. But this kind of little pass that goes to nobody and sets up the Irish, it just showed a level of panic that was totally unnecessary, that didn't really fit the pattern of the game at the time. And we saw a couple of those from Scotland.
Yeah, but particularly in that second half, we saw Ireland go through like 12 phases, and then another one where they went through 27 phases, and then they eventually got a penalty. I don't remember Scotland getting through more than five phase possessions in that second half before either knocking it on or giving up a penalty.
There was one. I'm sure they had 19 phases, but then it comes out and Finn Russell, trying to be a little bit too smart, looking one way, putting in a forward pass, and it's kind of
that's forward pass as well. Yeah,
the basics of rugby are very, very simple, and sometimes the support runner was up too quick and giving you no option as someone with a pass. Apart from, obviously, in the old days, if someone's going to be in front of you, keep hold of the ball yourself. But that was what Scotland did today, and it's kind of, they played such great heads-up rugby. Kinghorn, the centres, Finn Russell, some of the forwards really saw the gaps and saw what was on, and then they played blind rugby at key times.
I think a person that came back into this game that showed what Ireland missed last weekend was Rob Kearney, as well. Not only with his positioning in the backfield, which we all talk about a lot, but he also injected himself into the line very well. He was about the only player that really seemed to be breaking the line on a regular basis for either side, really.
And I think there's two things there. Obviously, he will be trying to reassert his authority at 15 and say, you made a wrong call, Mr. Schmidt, last week. But also he was fresher than most of his teammates because he hadn't really been subjected to the hits of England last week. And I think that makes a bit of a difference. He's come on and I wouldn't say he was flawless because I don't think it was a flawless game, but he showed great pace, great eye for the gap. His tackling was superb, and his catching and positioning, as you say, he's there saying, "I am number one. You just got to keep picking me."
Yep, absolutely. Yeah. He was the only player to get up to sort of 90 each, carrying 3 clean breaks and 5 defenders beaten. I mean, he had a very good game from that point of view, and also defensively as well. Comment in the live chat from Thomas English, I think something you've been pointing out is that though Scotland's ball handling killed them, their backline was very potent throughout the game. As you say, playing lots of that heads-up rugby, spotting where there's mismatches and having a go, and willing to have a go, which is why Scotland are perhaps one of the most enjoyable teams to watch in the Six Nations at the moment. With that, and also their pace of play.
I think once they, give some of these players a little bit more, maybe next year, and they'll probably lift themselves against England, which is always the case, but maybe next year you'll see that these guys actually have the confidence and won't be making the same mistakes. Because the ability is there absolutely in spades. Their ability and the pace, their turn of pace, would be very hard for a lot of sides. Ireland are able to suffocate, but Ireland got away with a few, and it's not just Ireland in World Rugby. This is something that is going on. But there were several times when O'Mahony positioned himself to block. And it's almost like he knew what he was. It's almost like it was a pre-rehearsed move, or a rehearsed move even, which kind of stopped the Scottish tacklers. And Scotland aren't as cute. They're still a little bit naive in that. So give them another year, another season, and who knows? But the talent that they have, raw talent, is very, very heartening to see for the Six Nations.
This blocking of tacklers is, as you say, it's now a practiced move, and we've seen there's some of the great analytics that now goes on by some of the writers will show you that, especially if you've got a scrum where they come one way and flip back the other way, you'll often see the blindside flanker has taken 2 or 3 steps forward and just happens to be standing next door to one of the defensive players, and just subtly getting in the way with and being far enough off the ball that they get away with it. And that's, as you say, they've got to get smarter about it. They've got to learn how to handle that, because it's what all teams are doing, and all teams are trying it to a greater or lesser effectiveness, really.
I can't understand really what the referees are doing, because for me there were two very clear examples of crossing from Ireland, and good old Roman just waved play on, and it's like there was definite stopping the tackler. So there's so many areas that I think World Rugby and the IRB have to, World Rugby, but the Referees Association need to get hold of. But then you wouldn't have had a spectacle like today. I think Eddie Butler on the TV said, it was utter chaos, and of course that's what breeds an exciting game.
And yes, that second half particularly there was definitely utter chaos, with Carberry the only one that managed to really take advantage of the chaos at that one point. So that's what it came down to. Ireland got their noses ahead, perhaps against the run of play in the first half, and just applied pressure to see it out. Do you think either of these sides were thinking that, hey, they're meeting in Pool A in the Rugby World Cup, and perhaps didn't show their full hands, or do you think we're too far away from that for those sort of games to be starting to be played?
I think Ireland were trying to just regroup, and I think Scotland are still trying to work out what's their best move. You can't take on a team like Ireland on Ireland's terms, and had a few of the marginal refereeing decisions gone Scotland's way, and some of the silliness from Scotland not happened, we might be talking a different match. The complexion might be that Ireland didn't score that first try. We would have gone back for a penalty on the tackle against Stuart Hogg when he kicked through. So I don't know. It's a difficult one, but I also believe that Ireland have benefited from playing the All Blacks. You think how many times Ireland have played the All Blacks in recent years, and Scotland haven't. Scotland haven't been playing the top sides. Ireland have clearly benefited, and I think that's that's where there's a bit of a gulf between the two sides, because Ireland know what they can do, they know how to do it. Scotland is a little bit of a hit and hope at times.
Yep, and one of the we've already had rumours or through papers as to who's going to come visit New Zealand in 2020 and in 2022. Obviously, 2021 is a Lions tour, and Scotland are not up for that. It's going to be Wales and Ireland yet again, which shows you that I think it's 2001 is the last time that that Scotland have played a game in New Zealand, and it shows that if you're not in that top four or top 3 or 4 teams of basically England, Ireland, Wales, and France because of more of a money thing and historical, obviously the ranking isn't up there, but they get to tour in. They're only impacted by the Lions, which makes them an attractive touring team for join those every 4 years. If you're not in those top 3 sort of places, you're going to struggle to get all the top, get the big tours.
And there's the thing, how do you get better? You get better by playing the best. You get better by beating the best. Scotland haven't got the same bite of the cherry. And, for me, there's a lot about rugby that's flawed. I believe that the Pacific nations should be getting a better deal. They should be part of the touring. We need to be not just looking after the likes of the All Blacks, they go to America to play, and we've already got rugby mad nations that are missing out. Rather than trying to convert a nation to rugby, why don't we get in with the nations that are very, very, their lives are all about rugby. You look at Fiji, Tonga, Samoa, but yeah, Scotland, they have the potential. They play brilliantly 1 minute and suddenly shoot themselves in the foot next. Ireland have played the best and have got more calculating. They've got more ice cool under pressure. Scotland can still lose their head a bit. And that's just, I might be wrong, and many Scots might be going, what is he talking about? But there is huge talent in Scotland. They are a team to be worried about. I am certainly worried about them this Six Nations against England. But, it's consistency, I think.
Yep, no, that's as you say. They're an exciting team on the up. We're playing some very exciting rugby, So congratulations to Ireland. There, you saw the game out, and that sets up obviously their games against Wales, away to Wales, for Ireland to be is on the last day is still going to be a very exciting game, because you expect Ireland to see off both France and Italy, unless we see a resurgent France tomorrow against England, which might change our minds. The other key games obviously will be Wales heading up to Scotland, and then also the England versus Scotland, as you say, in that final weekend as well. Those are going to be the key games for where this championship goes to. Mike, when you remind people where they can get your stuff, and thank you very much for joining me.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me. It's going to be interesting. I think the Welsh team are going to be interesting to watch, because they didn't really do what we know they're capable of against France. They've got Italy tomorrow, so it's kind of they're really ripe for a thumping next week, having not really been tested. So it will be interesting. But yes, thank you for having me. I'm on Twitter, Mark A. Forster, and I also write an occasional blog on WordPress, which I think is Mark A. Forster at WordPress.com.
Thank you very much. I've been Paul, obviously at DrivingMaul. It's a place to get me, and there's stuff up here, how to subscribe and all that kind of stuff, and videos that YouTube AI says you'll absolutely adore, so please go and check those out as well. I'll be back and doing post-match reaction to the England versus France game as well, so join me for that.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paul.